It pleases me to see you up and about, Carol. I am King Ezekiel. Welcome to the kingdom.
Hey guys, Kiwi here. In this video, I'll be going over and breaking down episode 702 of The Walking Dead, The Well. This episode is a lot more lighthearted after the season 7 premiere, and that's something the fans definitely needed. This episode was crafted beautifully, so let's jump right into it. The episode starts out with Carol being pulled on a cart by horses with people from the kingdom. We see Morgan by the tree in the preview photo, putting his mark on it so he'll know his way back if he needs to. This is in reference to him doing the same thing on his way to Terminus, and then again to Alexandria. We see everything from Carol's perspective here, while she's in and out of consciousness as the cart tips over and one of the horses get attacked and mauled on by zombies. Now I hate it when horses die in the show, but at least it distracted a small group of them while Morgan and the Kingdom soldiers fended off against the rest of the zombies. Carol actually starts envisioning the zombies as real people and flees around the building into the forest. She runs past a house with a fence around it and envisions yet another zombie as a person looking in through the window at her. And then she turns around to notice walkers in every direction, but luckily, Morgan and the soldiers caught up to her and help protect. As another group of Kingdom soldiers actually show up on horses and aid the battle, Carol continues this dream sequence, watching the walkers transform into people as they get killed. Turns out the Kingdom sent out a group to scout the area to help find those two soldiers, who have been out since before Rick and Morgan even saw one of them running away from them back at that barn in episode 615, I believe. Anyways, everyone travels back to the kingdom, and then we skip to seeing Carol in bed with Morgan sitting beside her. Morgan hangs the rabbit's foot over Carol's bed as a gesture that he's looking out for her and looking over her, whether she wants him to or not. Carol wakes up and Morgan starts to give her the rundown of what's up and where they are. This leads us into the 702 preview scene where Morgan shows her the kingdom and brings her to King Ezekiel. I've broken this down in previous videos, so feel free to check those out, but needless to say that the kingdom knows next to nothing about Carol and Morgan, or where they're from as Morgan explains to her. Morgan brings Carol into the stadium to meet King Ezekiel, and we hear one of the conversations that we've been waiting for since we saw the initial season 7 trailer. I gotta say, I absolutely loved the way Morgan executed Jesus' line from the comics that he tells Rick when he brings him to meet King Ezekiel.
Yeah. I forgot to say that Ezekiel has a tiger.
That literally made me laugh, and I was actually worried that we wouldn't get to see that line as the characters are different than in the comics, but we do. The way we meet King Ezekiel is actually quite different in the comics than in the show. Rick is brought to Ezekiel by Jesus, as Carol and Morgan are actually dead by the time we ever meet Ezekiel or Jesus. I love how the show remixes these two characters into the kingdom story by helping introduce it and bring it into the show. The chemistry between Morgan, Carol, and Ezekiel is honestly pure gold, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of it in the future. From the second I heard Ezekiel's voice, I fell in love with his character. This is exactly how I expected him to sound when I read his dialogue in the comics. Seeing Ezekiel in the trailers made me a bit worried as he seemed a bit shorter and less bulky than in the comics, but the actor proved that he could pull off an amazing King Ezekiel as we see in this episode. I also think that his personal servant is hilarious, who I believe's name is Jerry, but don't quote me on that. So Ezekiel introduces himself and the kingdom, and then asks Carol what she thinks of the place. She replies with great appreciation and gratitude, but it couldn't be more obvious to the viewers and fans that she's putting on an act, as we soon hear the conversation between her and Morgan explaining how she thinks that this place is completely ridiculous and wants to leave the second she can.
This place is a damn circus. All of it. These people, this is make-believe. It's playtime. And you're just... I'll go.
You know I can't let you. No.
You'll what? Tie me up like a wolf. Is that it?
Morgan almost wants to control Carol just because he wants to keep her safe. He's so keen on sticking his neck out for her, but he knows that she has to figure things out on her own. He just doesn't want her getting hurt again or even dying, as he said to Rick that he would find her and help keep her safe. Morgan accompanies some kingdom soldiers along with Ezekiel to feed their pigs. They herd the pigs into a room with a walker to actually eat it, showing how the kingdom keeps their livestock producing so much. One of the soldiers we saw in the preview, Benjamin, is just starting to learn how to take down walkers, and it looks like he isn't too terribly successful yet. Another soldier, Richard, tells Morgan that no one needs to know about this. Morgan asks if he's referring to the pigs, to which he says all of it. We learn more about what that means later on, but once they get back to the kingdom, Ezekiel compliments Morgan's skills with his staff and asks him how he learned that.
How did you come to acquire that skill?
It was a cheesemaker, a friend.
Morgan responds with a joke about Eastman, and I actually chuckled to that as well, as I have honestly grown to love Eastman and Morgan's character. Anyways, Ezekiel asks Morgan to tutor Benjamin in combat, and eventually Morgan agrees after practically getting begged to. We get another look at the kingdom's layout as the choir of the community sings. We see Morgan training Benjamin as Carol gathers for supplies that she needs to leave with. She actually even manipulates someone, crying over how wonderful the kingdom is and their food, asking for tissues just so that she can take some clothes. Another example of Carol putting on a mask, which seems to be quite the theme this episode. Later on, Ezekiel then decides to bring Morgan to a meeting with the Saviors. It is revealed that he made a deal with them where he gives them half of the livestock in return for peace and protection from the walkers, just like how we found out the Hilltop doing the same last season. The Saviors seem very impressed and pleased with Ezekiel's business and his product. Richard adds in that they were well fed and he was sure of it. At first, we were led to believe that they were feeding the livestock that ate zombies to their people. But now, I'd like to think that they're only doing that to the Saviors to meet their demands while impressing them and getting a little bit of secret revenge on top of it. A confrontation between one of the Saviors and Richard occurs, and it results in a fistfight. Ezekiel, being the mature one, breaks it up and allows one free punch to the dickhead Savior who started it all, whose name is Darren, I believe. He adds in a cheap shot too before getting called off by the leader of the group, Gavin, who says that Ezekiel has treated him well and actually starts to show great respect towards him considering how big of the assholes Saviors can be. But then Gavin proceeds to inform Ezekiel that next week's shipment better be just as full, or else Richard will be the first to go since he is his right-hand man. Ezekiel and Morgan then discuss the Saviors. Morgan asks him if he just brought him along in case things went wrong and he needed to kill again, but Ezekiel disagrees and tells him quite the opposite. Most of the people in the kingdom are completely unaware of the Saviors, and Ezekiel wants to keep it that way. He knows that Morgan knew about them from their run-in with them at the end of the last season, and Morgan can be a quite helpful asset for the kingdom in general. Most of the civilians of the kingdom are pretty much on the same level as the Alexandrians when Rick and group first got there. That being said, later on Benjamin tells Morgan the tragic story of how sometime about a year ago, his father passed away to a horde along with 7 other soldiers from the kingdom on a run. They said that the horde was too big and there was no backup. And as a quick side note, how long has it been since No Way Out in the beginning of season 6? Is it possible that the horde that Daryl, Abraham, and Sasha lured away from Alexandria could have been the horde that killed Ben's dad along with those 7 other men? Well, anyways, after the talk with Ben, Morgan brings Carol her food in her room, but then he realizes that she's left. Ezekiel actually catches her picking some fruit before she leaves and then confronts her on it. She calls Ezekiel and the kingdom a joke, trying to explain what she's been through but unable to properly portray all the thoughts going through her head. He tells her that he knows not to bullshit a bullshitter, one of his famous lines from the comics as he actually starts the speech which was given to Michonne. I personally love how they remixed this, and I was waiting all episode for this. I was so engaged in Ezekiel's story as he's explaining it to Carol. The actor could not have done a better job expressing Ezekiel's true side. Ezekiel leveling with Carol and taking a step back with his persona was beautifully shown with the change of his voice and personality. He just seems so real and genuine, I love it. As I said at the beginning of the video, I was worried that Ezekiel wouldn't do the show justice, but he definitely did, in so many ways. On Talking Dead, Greg Nicotero gives a brief pre-recorded explanation to his opinions of Carol and Ezekiel this episode. He says that Carol is watching someone throw away their alter ego, the same alter ego that she's been using to protect herself and the group. Then she meets someone else who is doing it, in such a grand and elaborate style. Carol realizes that he's doing it too, because he wants people to live and figures this is what people need, something to live for and a person that they can gravitate to who is larger than life. The script that Ezekiel says was directly ripped from the comics, and I enjoy, even though the kingdom is so remixed, that they have still gotten in all the key elements from the comics, as far as Jesus' one-liner at the beginning of the episode to Ezekiel's direct speak with Michonne being carried over to Carol.
People want someone to follow. They want someone to make them feel safe. And people who feel safe are less dangerous, more productive. They see a dude with a tiger, shoot. They start telling stories about finding it in the wild, wrestling it into submission, turning it into his pet. Who am I to burst their bubble? Next thing you know, they treat me like royalty. They needed someone to follow. So I acted the part. I faked it till I made it.
It just flowed so well, and everything just clicked together into one beautiful episode. In the final scene of the episode, Morgan brings Carol back to the house at the beginning, with the fence around it, which also has a graveyard inside of it. We get a good back and forth going between the two of them.
It's good we're here. 10 more minutes and I might start to regret all the times I tried to shoot and stab you.
I think you're my favorite person I ever knocked out. Definitely top 2 or 3.
Morgan referring to when he's knocked out one of the wolves. I feel like Carol and Morgan have both rubbed off on each other, and it's helped to balance their characters and their overall perspectives on the world. Carol gets to live alone in a simple house like she wants, not having to worry about a place to defend or people to fight for. We see her bury that walker who died inside the house, showing respect for the person who once lived there, as she'll obviously be taking over. The episode finishes with Ezekiel showing up at her doorstep with Shiva in normal clothes, showing that he respects her choice to leave, but still wants to be her friend. He wants to know that she is safe, and wants her to know that she is always welcome to come back to the kingdom if she so chooses. If you guys wanted a more specifically detailed breakdown on King Ezekiel and his past, be sure to check out my last video on the channel. I'd appreciate a like on the video if you've enjoyed anything I've said today, and feel free to check out my channel for everything Season 7 related. Even subscribe if you like. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time guys, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.